I mean, there are studies out now showing that, like you mentioned, like early time restricted feeding might be the way to go, where you're eating when it's daylight. So you don't have to skip breakfast. There's no like rule about that. Sometimes it might be even better to have your meals earlier on in the day and not have them so late. But like you said, life gets in the way, and I think that's when you just got to be flexible and not be so stringent.
Welcome to the Fredrickson Health Show, highlighting expert practitioners from health, fitness, injury prevention, functional medicine, and integrative medicine. If you are into upgrading and optimizing your health, this podcast is for you. This podcast is for educational purposes only and not intended to be used as personalized medical advice. And now, here is your host, Dr. Robert Fredrickson.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Fredrickson Health Show. Today, I'm happy to welcome Gryn. Gryn is an intermittent fasting expert, wellness coach, author, human movement specialist, and also personal trainer. He's done many different things on this health and wellness journey, from being passionate about golf, fitness, wellness, and how it's kind of transformed into fasting. So today we're going to talk a lot about fasting, how fasting can work, how it can also benefit your health, but also some people who might not be candidates for fasting because fasting's not initially for everyone. And I think that's important to know. So Gryn, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Awesome. So Gryn, tell us, when did your health and wellness journey start? Tell us about kind of the early days.
Back in the day?
Back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, my journey with health, I think for me, I don't have this huge like transformation health journey. I've always been intrigued by it. I was lucky. I started lifting weights early on in my life. And I think that just sort of led me down the path of health. I mean, I didn't initially start coaching health and fitness. I was in the corporate world for about 5-6 years and realized that I didn't want to sit at a desk. So I wanted to just get up and move, and yeah, it sort of prompted me to learn more about health and wellness. And I started with resistance training with a lot of individuals, and it has sort of grown to more of a holistic approach where we focus on a lot of different pillars, which I know we'll talk about today. So, for me, my health journey, I don't have like a huge story other than, I've just, been trying to optimize my health as best as possible. A lot of it's done through self-experimentation and obviously having a podcast of my own and coaching clients. I've learned a lot from that. So I've just tried to apply that to, myself and helping others.
That's awesome. So did you start off initially just, like as a typical personal trainer, focus more on weight loss, stuff like that? And how's that kind of health and wellness? Because I know you talk about lab testing and you talk about fasting, how has kind of your methodology evolved throughout the years?
Yeah, I mean, initially, yes, it was mainly resistance training, which obviously is a big piece to the puzzle. But I think I started to realize to help get individuals results, I needed to sort of, focus on other pillars of health as well, because they're all linked to some way, right? Like, if you're lifting weights, that's great. But if you're not optimizing your sleep, you're not focusing on managing stress, then that's going to take a toll as well. So I just think my journey in health and wellness has just sort of evolved into that as to focusing not just on one thing, but try to get, hit it from every different angle, because obviously everyone's a little bit different in their journey and their goals. And so it sort of led me to that approach.
Yeah, that's so important because it's more, we all know we should exercise. Everybody knows that. But then it's like, if you're having trouble losing weight, how's your sleep? How's your stress? What are you able to do on a daily basis? How many steps can you get in? And not everybody can do 10,000 steps daily. So it's just, everyone's different. And I'm sure you've seen that throughout the years. And talk about, because you have an interesting background. You started off in finance, and then you kind of led to that you don't like sitting down all day long, maybe behind a computer, and you kind of like being out in front of, clients. How is that, what started you in finance and what made you switch, or what made you find the switch when that did happen?
Well, I think initially most people would attest to this, that when they get out of college, they don't know what they want to do. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I think I studied finance at Indiana, and I was like, okay, I'll just get into some type of financial position. And I think those first few years, or maybe even longer than few years, it's about just like finding out what sort of gets you up in the morning, what excites you. And I just realized that's not what did. Working for a financial institution didn't really sort of light me up. And I realized that health did. And so I just decided to follow my passion and then just turn it into a business.
That's awesome. So following your passion, that's kind of like what makes you up, what wakes you up in the morning, what drives you to get out of bed. And for you, it was health and fitness. And I think that's huge because if you're doing something that you hate and you don't like doing, you're not going to be passionate about it. And I've heard you talk about this important. I want to talk about how you define goals and how you find a goal and stick to that goal, and what other people can do who maybe have trouble sticking to their goals as well, pertaining to health and wellness in particular.
Yeah. In regards to health and wellness and setting goals, I think a lot of it comes down to just planning out, like, sort of what are those daily steps that you're going to take consistently over a long period of time. I think a lot of times we get so focused on the results that we really don't get, honed in on the process of doing it. And you got to enjoy that process. So I think for me, when it comes to health and wellness, or for my goals, that's first and foremost is, I have a bigger picture, a bigger sort of vision in mind, but I really hone in on the process and just staying consistent. And it's not about, doing it all in one day. It's just about doing a little bit every day.
Staying consistent, putting in the work.
Yeah.
Do you set yearly goals for yourself, for your health and wellness, personal and fitness, and your business?
That's a good question. I would say that I do have some benchmarks I go by. I'm not like a huge goal setter, actually. I mean, I try to just do the things that will move my health or my business in the right direction, and knowing that the results will come. That's not to say that setting goals isn't a bad thing, but I think a lot of times that, people set goals and then they sort of don't know what path to follow. And I'm all about just like following the path, and then the goals will come after.
Yeah, that's so true, because you can set a goal and not know how to get there. Or you can be strategic and say, hey, I'm already working out every day. I'm already eating healthy. Maybe you don't have any weight to lose. Obviously you don't, you're a very fit individual. But yeah, so many people who don't know where to get started, either set a goal or, talk to somebody like Bryan who can say, hey, these are the steps to get you to that goal, or maybe this goal that you want to achieve, or maybe that goal is too large to begin with. Maybe start a little bit smaller and, start chipping away and start being consistent. So I want to talk about fasting. This was the first thing. To be honest, when I heard about fasting, when we're supposed to talk about fasting, I was like, well, because I know fasting's not for everybody, but I know fasting can be great for a lot of people. But some people who fast in the mornings, they can have issues, either with hormones, with anxiety, with blood sugar imbalances. But not to scare people away from fasting, because fasting can be a great tool, which you describe, for weight loss, for decreasing calories, for increasing mental capacity, cognitive function, etc. So tell us how you started fasting and using fasting with your clients.
Yeah, I mean, initially what drew me to fasting was a client of mine that I was training, and she was pre-diabetic, tried everything, and got into fasting and just had really good results. And so that led me down the road of trying it on myself. And I remember when I first started doing it, it was very uncomfortable, and just took me out of my comfort zone. Eventually I got more and more used to it, and has sort of led me down this path. Gosh, I've probably been doing it for the most part on and off for the past, like, just say 8 years. So, my journey in fasting was just something that I was looking at as a tool to help myself or other individuals maybe get to where they want to go health wise. Obviously, as we get older, it's a little more difficult to achieve our health goals sometimes, and we have to find different avenues. And this was, something that it's evolved for me, my fasting process. I think I was a little bit more hardcore back, years ago. And now, just through my own research and just interviewing some great experts on my podcast, learning more about how, it is a stressor, and it could be used as a tool, but it also could be overused, and it could be a, sort of a detriment to some individuals if it's not used correctly.
Awesome. Yeah. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. So when you first started fasting, what did you do? Were you doing extended fast, like 20-hour fast, 4-hour eating windows? What was your schedule like, and how has that evolved?
Yeah, initially, I actually slowly got into it, and I always advise people to do that. Is where I remember, like, if I was used to eating at a certain time, I just gradually pushed it back. took advantage of the overnight fast and
And
just pushed back.
why did you, sorry to interrupt, but why did you want to start fasting initially too? What led you to wanting to try fasting? Was it because I know you're already, was it for weight loss? Was it for mental, increases? What was the,
I think initially I just wanted to, well, for one, that my client had some great results on it. So I wanted to sort of learn about like how that worked. And also too, for myself, I mean, I'm 42, but I was in my 30s and I just felt like, gosh, what the way I was, my body was in my 20s, it was that much more difficult. I was like, well, maybe I'll just, learn about fasting and see if it can, help me get to where I want to go as far as just like, body and even mind. So that was sort of the reasoning behind it. And I wanted to just try it on myself. So
very cool. So now,
yeah.
now talk about how you started, with your fasting schedule daily, what that looked like when you had your first meal. What was that first meal?
Yeah, I mean, initially when I did it, I slowly pushed back that first meal, like let's just say about an hour, and I did that over a week span. And then once I got used to that, I gradually pushed it back. And then as far as breaking the fast, I mean, I think if you've never done it, it's really important to slowly break that fast. Obviously, chew your food and make sure that you're not eating something that's maybe like an irritant to your gut. So even just like having something like a bone broth or some type of soup is a great way to break it. And then maybe just something light that's maybe easy on your system. Perhaps that could be eggs or maybe just a light protein, nothing too heavy. But yeah, no. So it was just something that I gradually got into, and my fasting windows have changed through the years. I mean, right now I've actually cut back and I've opened up my window, and for a few different reasons. I'm just experimenting with whole food carbs and just seeing how that affects my performance in the gym. And so, but it's one of those things where I think for anybody, you want to sort of decide what your goals are and then maybe do some type of measurement as far as it doesn't have to be like I use a DEXA scan a lot for myself and
Nice.
clients. Yeah. So DEXA scan, but it could be something like calipers or something. Maybe I know there's ones where I can't think of the name, where you like hold the these like it's an apparatus where you step on it. It gives you an idea of like where you're at body fat percentage
Like the
wise.
InBody scale, maybe? Or
Yeah, the InBody. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah, thank you. But anyways, it's good to sort of measure and test where you're at, both in that and then blood work and things like that as well.
very cool. Yeah. So what are some things maybe people do when they start fasting that they do wrong, or maybe they could do better? I mean,
Yeah,
and
so
it's maybe like breaking the fast, or maybe they put cream in the coffee, and maybe that. Do you think that breaks your fast? And like, what are
well,
some things like that?
I mean, yeah, that's a common question as far as like what breaks a fast. I mean, I think that yes, I mean anything with caloric value technically breaks a fast, but I think through the years I've become more not as like hardcore on that. I mean, if you want to put cream in your coffee, I think that's completely fine. If it and or butter, like a lot of people like to do, but I don't think that's such a big deal. I mean, you have to think about your reasonings behind why you're doing fasting. I think the biggest one for most people, at least for my clients, is just to create some boundaries for around your day and around eating. It doesn't have to be some type of contest where I didn't go for 20 hours today. I mean, there's more and more studies coming out now, even showing that, if people are like, oh, I want to do it for like cell cleansing or autophagy, which is another reason people look into it, is honestly, exercise can be just as effective. Some type of high intensity exercises. I was just looking at some studies today about that. So there's many ways to get there, and it doesn't have to be these long extended fasts. If that's something you want to do, maybe once a year, just to self experiment and do some. I don't know. I think a lot of times when you get into fasting, it just becomes more of a mental cleanse than anything.
It does, yeah. So, and I
Yeah.
like how you mentioned some of the buzzwords that we hear in this field is like autophagy, and that was a big buzzword. At least where I'm at, past couple of years, we're hearing about it. But like you mentioned, autophagy happens all the time. It happens every single
Right.
second, every single day, and actually intense exercise can increase autophagy. Can you tell us just like what the definition of autophagy is for anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah, the definition is like self-eating. So it's like it's just a way for your body to I almost like equate a lot of things to like cars. Like if you were going to take if you had a car, you would obviously have to take it into the shop, unless you got like an electric car, you probably don't have to take it in much, but a normal car, you're taking it in to get, tires rotated, oil changed. And, same type of things with your body, and autophagy and cell cleansing is, just getting rid of the bad cells and allowing new cells to come in. And so it's sort of almost like a recycling process.
Right. But you don't have to fast to do that, but fasting does increase it. I think that's where a lot of people, they think they have.
And again, as far as fasting and autophagy, I think it's still the verdict's out there as far as I think as far as how long, I think that's not a black and white thing.
Yeah, because I've heard so many different things. It has to be 3 days. It has to be 3 days to fast, and then you get the increase in stem cells. And then there's some studies, hey, just doing daily intermittent fasting can increase the top. So I don't know, you know.
Yeah, that's the tough thing. I think a lot of the studies that are done with fasting are like on rat models and things like that. It's one of those things. But autophagy is a real thing. But I think they're starting to realize that, things like exercise, and there's other stressors that can help sort of, do the same thing.
Yeah, and even supplements. There's even like supplements out there, even some drugs that increase autophagy. But yeah, so yeah, we're just learning more about it, and there's no way to measure autophagy that I know about. In the body. I don't. How are you going to know?
Sure. Yeah.
So with fasting, do you ever see people like overeat like in their window because they fasted in the morning and say, okay, now I have more leeway to, go crazy at the buffet or wherever they go? Do you see any downsides to stuff like that? Or
I think that can happen. I think the key is to allow yourself to have a window that's big enough so you don't have to feel like you're rushing your meals in. I think that, you can have an 8-hour window and have 3 meals, and eat the same amount that you did. I think the biggest thing that I start a lot of clients on is picking a window that closes at a certain time. Because if, let's just say you're closing your eating window at 7:00, right there, you're giving yourself some time to digest your food before bed, which can help with quality of sleep. And also by doing that, you're eliminating probably a lot of the processed foods that get eaten later on in the evening.
Sure.
It's like nothing good gets eaten after 7, right?
Right.
So same sort of concept there. Honestly, I think just doing that alone can be enough for people, especially just starting out. I mean, you don't need to do these long fasts. I think that right there, picking a window to close your eating window, picking a time to close your eating window, is a great place to start it, because it just creates this sort of cascade of benefits that can come from that.
I love that idea, because I think when people hear fasting, they think, oh, we got to cut out breakfast. We can't have breakfast. We can't eat till noon. But no one really talks about the end point when we stop eating. And I think there's a lot of different benefits and studies related to, hey, if we stop our last meal at 7, and we go to, there's benefits with that, with sleep quality, with increases in metabolism. So, I think stopping the eating is super important if your schedule allows it. I've actually been, I got 2 little kids. We're in baseball season now, and schedules are just crazy. So, we're sometimes eating late, sometimes I never know. And I know that's not good. I know we should keep a consistent, eating schedule that's consistent with our biology and circadian rhythms and all that. But sometimes life does not allow that to happen.
Right. Yeah, and that's another thing I'll say is I mean, there are studies out now showing that, like you mentioned, like early time restricted feeding might be the way to go, where you're eating when it's daylight. So you don't have to skip breakfast. There's no rule about that. Sometimes it might be even better to have your meals earlier on in the day and not have them so late. But like you said, life gets in the way, and I think that's when you just got to be flexible and not be so stringent.
Yeah. How have you kind of, because I know I've been really restrictive on myself, not currently, but in the past, like, no, I can't do that. I can't do this because of that study and that, but now I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to be good as 80% of the time or 90% of the time, and then 10% of the time I'll allow myself some leeway. How's your kind of thought process evolved? Maybe you're super strict all the time. I don't know. Do you have kids, Brian?
No, I do not have kids. I have 2 dogs.
Nice.
Yeah. But, I think for me, I'm the same way. I people think that sometimes I'm like this super strict eater. I mean, I find that when I'm obviously at home and in a routine, that's when I eat best, right? I mean, I think it's tough sometimes when you're traveling to do that. But I think it's all about just making the better decision. It's not necessarily the perfect decision, right? So like if you're going out to eat, for example, I just went out to eat last night. I don't really like going out to eat. I think that cooking for yourself or for your family is probably like one of the best hacks for health that you could have. But we
Definitely.
do go out, right? We do go out to eat socially, and I did last night. But it's just about making decisions. And like, I don't know, it was his birthday, my buddy's birthday, and they brought out these, like, it was a Mexican restaurant, they brought those churros like for
Uh-huh.
dessert,
Sure.
and I just was like, I can't do that. And that's not to say that I won't have a dessert, but that was a decision where I was like, I just know that's not going to run well with me. I just, yeah. So I think it's just about making the better decision, not about making the perfect decision. And it could be little things from, instead of having French fries, you have a baked potato, like little, just little things like that, but they add up over time.
I really like that a lot. Making the better decision, not always the best decision, but making the better decision, doing that consistently, like you said earlier, making those consistent efforts day in, day out can make huge progress down the road. Yeah, but it's hard. If you're out to eat, making better decisions can be hard. You're looking at the salad, and the salad's more expensive than the chicken breast, or whatever else, or the fried food. You're like, it's
Well,
it's
yeah,
it's more
I
expensive to eat healthy sometimes.
it can be.
It can be.
It can be. I think you can be smart about it. I think that if you're someone who eats at home 5, 6 days a week and you go out once a week, I would say go out, eat what you want to eat. Like, you don't,
Sure.
that, that could be your splurge. But if you're someone that's eating out 4, 5, 6 days a week, that's when it can be an issue. That's when it can be an issue. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to control calories when you're out to eat, for sure. I mean,
yeah. I mean,
uh,
if you're eating quality foods, if you're prioritizing protein, I think that it's easier to, control, caloric intake.
so I know it's not all about calories, but calories,
Sure.
there are unit of measurement. In your bio, you talk about it's not about counting calories. Did you count calories before? How has that evolved in your journey and with your clients as well?
Yeah, I mean, counting calories, actually, it's interesting. My viewpoint on it has changed a bit. I think they do matter. They do matter, but it's not the only thing.
Sure.
So I think it's changed. I think before I like never even thought about it, but now I do with my clients, have them, use like some type of app, a chronometer, or MyFitnessPal or something, just at least initially to get an idea, like what are they consuming? Because honestly, some people and individuals that I work with, especially males, like I find that sometimes they're actually under consuming,
Mm,
or they're under consuming protein. So I
hmm.
think it's good to just get a baseline. I'm not saying you have to record every day, but at least initially have an idea of, what you're intaking and what are your macros.
Yeah, I think that's important too. Just like every once in a while, periodically check in on MyFitnessPal just to see kind of what, because once like you have a good idea of what the calories are, the protein requirements, of certain foods. And I'm always kind of shocked when I do it, once a year. Usually we'll say, hey, I'm just going to track my food for a couple days or for a week, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot how many calories were in this, this item, or how
Yeah.
much little protein was in here. And um, with topic of protein, we know protein is so important for satiety, for muscle building, for helping us have lean body mass as we age. What are some things you focus on with your clients with protein? And is there a certain number that you like to achieve? I know everyone's numbers kind of differ based on activities and goals, but what are some general guidelines for people to look for?
Yeah. I mean, I had Dr. Don Lehman on my
Oh,
podcast. He's like,
awesome.
yeah, that was really cool. He's
The
like a
Godfather.
protein expert. And, I think from all the studies that are done, like zero point 0.7 to zero point 0.8 per gram of body weight, is a good rule of thumb. So, if an individual weighs, 150 pounds, then, let's just say 30 grams of proteins, a good, sort of target to have. But he also talked about, it's protein is one thing, but also the amino acids. So he talked about a amino acid called leucine, and leucine is important when it comes to muscle protein synthesis and, muscle growth, which is, obviously sort of the same thing. But so protein is like critical for that, and the amino acids that go along with it. So the quality of the protein is important as well, because not all proteins have all the essential amino acids and things like that in it. So, if you're not eating animal proteins, which honestly back in the day I actually didn't have a ton of animal proteins. Now I implement a lot more in my life just because I'm realizing just as far as like the bioavailability of that protein, the quality of it, as far as just having all the amino acids. So I think it's important. You don't have to eat animal proteins. You can supplement with others, but I think the most efficient way to do that is to obviously have quality animal proteins with each meal.
Yeah, and so you had Dr. Lehman on there. That's awesome. Yeah, he's a guy I really look up to. So I know he talks about, and I don't, maybe I'm getting this wrong. Maybe correct me if I am wrong. Is it about 3 grams of leucine per? That's kind of like what he
Per,
wants to achieve per meal to get like the muscle stimulus.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, for people don't
Yeah.
not listening, leucine is a branched chain amino acid. There's 3 of those, but there's also 9 essential amino acids that we need to get. And usually we get those through protein sources, complete protein sources. And so, when you were not eating animal protein, how did you get kind of your complete amino acid profile, or did you even know? Or
I didn't even know. I probably didn't even know. I mean, I was like a pescatarian for a while, where, obviously you can get some, obviously with fish, there obviously is protein. It's maybe not as well balanced as having animal proteins. But either way, yeah, I was something that I probably didn't track as much that I do now, just to keep an eye on because, it was just something I sort of looked past, I think, earlier on.
yeah, very cool. So now I want to talk more. I want to kind of dive into what you do specifically. I'm going to talk about what is your program called for fasting? Is the 21-day transformation?
Yeah. So, well, things are changing. I do have a 21-day intermittent fasting challenge.
That's what it is. Okay.
Right. But I do have a book coming out, Step Ladder System, and that's going to have a bunch of programs sort of in there, along with my main sort of flagship program is a 6-month program called the Fat Burner Blueprint.
Fat burner blueprint. So with the step ladder system, so that incorporates some of the intermittent fasting challenge into it, or is it a little bit different?
Yeah, I mean, the step ladder system is going to incorporate pretty much everything that's in my 6-month program. So that's, all around mindset. That's around stress management, activity upgrade, sleeping like a superhero, and nutrition and meal timing as well.
Sign me up. That sounds great. Sleeping like a superhuman. I love that.
Yeah.
Talk about the step ladder system. How did how did this evolve? How did you come up with this? And what are some of it hasn't launched yet though, or has it?
Yeah, the book is done.
Nice.
Everything's being put together as far as it's going to be sort of like a big funnel that people can, buy certain things if they want, or, whatever fits their needs. If they're looking to, I have something about build muscle in your basement. I have like a thing about a Q&A. So it's sort of a whole bundle, I'd say, of different things.
And it sounds so comprehensive because usually, you get like 1 or 2 out of the 6 you mentioned, but they don't kind of put them all together, which people are really looking for. They want everything. They want to get help from all different aspects.
Yeah.
So did you always know about all these different things together, or did you ever like kind of just piecemeal it one by one? Say, hey, like I know mindset's important, but how do I incorporate that into a weight loss patient? And how do I, mitigate stress? And how do I optimize sleep? And how do I get nutrition and activity levels to balance each other? How did you get all these things to come together like you did for this program?
Well, what I did, it's just through experience, honestly, like just working with clients and realizing that, well, yeah, I mean, initially I was like, oh, it's all about resistance training. And then I'm like, oh, well, no, actually nutrition is a big part of it as well. And then, as I've gone through the years, you're like, okay, well, he's not sleeping so well. So that's something we need to focus on. And so I think it was just my experience through working with clients allowed me to put together this step ladder system and this sort of the 6 steps, to health. So.
And so it's also a way for clients to, not only are you, time gets limited when you get busy, you can't see everybody one-on-one, that you want
Right.
to. So sometimes stuff like this, like you've created helps even more people that can use this anytime, anywhere that they want to do. So for example, would you mind sharing anything that you like, not give away the whole program for free or anything, but how do you incorporate mindset for clients?
Yeah. I mean, so initially, if I work with a client, what we'll do is we'll really dive into their why, their reasonings why, and sort of setting just understanding like what are those unconscious things that you've done that you might not even know of that were sort of hampering your results. And so we really dive into that. I think that's something, especially with males, like they're not necessarily aware of those patterns that have come up. And this could be anything from thinking they're just like, they were always this fat kid, right? I mean, like honestly, they put this label on themselves and they've had this for so many years. And, they just think sort of it's a joke, but it's really not. I mean, it's something that, if you keep telling yourself that, then you make a label of yourself. So I think it's one of those things where creating clarity is all based around just getting crystal clear on your why, and uncovering any like unconscious self-sabotaging habits that could have, or patterns that could have been coming up through the past 30 years or something. So that's the first thing. Did you want me to go?
Go. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, go ahead and like just quickly go through just not the whole program, but what do you do for stress? And,
So creating clarity would be one. Next is what we'll do is we'll find like those major culprits, those low hanging fruits that we can create some small wins right off the bat. So
awesome.
Small changes, but big results. Next, activity upgrade. Some people need this, some people don't. And I just came out today. I think Dr. Jaquish with the X3 bar is something that I've utilized for myself and my clients. It's something that you could do out of your home, and it's variable resistance, and it's a nice system, especially if you've never done any type of lifting. And it's a little bit easier on your joints than normal weights. So some type of activity upgrade, something to keep them consistent. Doesn't have to be this 2-hour workout. And then from there, sleeping obviously is important. And we just, we try to create this simple, manageable routine, both in the evening and potentially in the morning, to help with sleep. Next, like you mentioned, stress. And stress is one of those things, especially I think with a lot of males, they just don't really think that they need to deal with or sort of wrap their arms around. And so we try to create some type of mindfulness practice. And, this could be meditation, but it could be something like, just maybe a short yoga class or whatever it is, some type of breathing exercises to help with mindfulness. And then lastly is nutrition and meal timing. So that's sort of the 6 steps and what is, what I go through in the book and stuff. So
I love it. That's so important for everybody. You mentioned the X3 bar, and so I've never tried it myself, and I've seen it. I know the concept behind it. Do you only do that? Or do you incorporate other fitness, activities into that, or how does that work with you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I never used it up till a few years ago. And then when COVID hit, it was like, okay, well, I'm working out in my basement. I need something else. And that's sort of how it came about. And so I started using it through that. I really liked it. I liked it, especially because definitely a few of the exercises, because I was so used to traditional lifting, I really enjoyed them. They were a little bit easier on my joints and just less, I don't know, just easier to set up. Like sometimes, doing deadlifts, it's like, okay, it's not that it's that big of a pain, but it was a lot more efficient doing it in my basement with bands and a bar than a bunch of weights that I didn't have. So I still use it to this day, but I do mix it up. Now I'm back into the gym, and I try to maybe do 50-50, I'd say. Sometimes I'll do X3, sometimes I'll go into the gym because, there's a little more, you could do a little bit more like functional work, obviously, in the gym if I want to do, some type of sprints or some type of lateral movement or whatever it is that just to mix it up. So
that's awesome. And you called one of your phrases, was it building muscle in the basement or?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I want to try the X. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I want to try the X3 bar out sometimes. It seems. Are you familiar with the ARX machines at all?
I'm not. I know there's obviously some competitors out there. I mean, there's some that are more expensive. I think I talked with him about like the tonal. Have you heard of the tonal?
Oh, yeah.
But I've not heard of. I know there's some other band systems out there. I've not heard of that one.
So ARX, it's not a band system. It's a whole machine, and it's like I don't know too much about it, so anyone listening, I might butcher it, but it's like continual resistance. So if you're pushing, it's going to match the intensity, and it's going to bring you back. So proponents of it say you only need 2 rounds of 20 minutes per week, and that's any more than that is too much. My buddy in Austin has one, and they're getting, great results with it. I know they're super expensive, but I do want to try it sometime because you can just hear like feel like because it's increasing the resistance as you're pressing, and it's matching exactly the output that you're giving it.
Yeah, yeah. There's a few companies. I think there's another one a buddy of mine has called Virtuin, I want to say.
Virtuin, okay.
Yeah, yeah, where it's like the load sort of it feels like what you can resist, and it'll like you said, it increases the load. And yeah, I think that stuff's great. I mean, there's a lot of studies done on like a time under tension, and
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to be doing all these these sets and these reps. If you do a few that are like really really intense, that you can get the same type of growth from that.
And I really think it just boils down to what works for you. If is that going to work for you? If you can go to this clinic and do it twice a week
Right.
for 20 minutes and it's consistent and you can do that, do it. If you like going to the gym because one, you get stress relief, you get to catch up on watching TV, or you get to have community at your CrossFit group, do whatever works for you, and just stay consistent with it. And I think that's the biggest thing. And what I've learned anyways with most people, and I'm sure you have too, what are your, I know you have the step ladder system, you have your 6 month kind of blueprint program. What are your goals, the next 5, 10 years, and where do you see kind of your health and wellness, business going?
Yeah. So good question. I mean, my goals are right now to, build my flagship program, work with clients one-on-one, and then eventually get that to where I can hold groups of individuals. That way I can affect more people and help more people rather than just one-on-one. So I think that's the biggest thing right now is helping people through my book, but then, identifying the right individuals that need that one-on-one, and then eventually just creating some type of group programs that individuals can work together. Because I think there's something powerful in working with groups. As much as I enjoy one-on-one with individuals, when you're next to someone else who's your age and having similar issues, I think that's a motivation in itself. And I found that when I was doing training back in the day with groups, is you're next to someone who's younger than you, and it just pushing you on. I think that can really help. So
That's awesome. Yeah, there's a lot to be said with community building, with group building. I even know, physicians and doctors who do group classes now, where they bring people with similar conditions. Maybe we have a diabetes class and similar individuals, similar issues, and then they can build off each other. They can be accountable. They can, help each other out. Hey, like I'm falling back with my diet. What are you doing? Oh, I'm doing this and this. And so I think it's a great way. And especially with fitness and health, these stuff happens in life. Life gets busy. And of course, to add all the chaos to it, we always hear about all the new stuff, and then we want to try the new stuff, and maybe it's not for everybody. And one thing we didn't talk about, I want to just kind of circle back to the fasting part is you've mentioned this before, but when is fasting maybe not a good idea? What are some signs and symptoms of fasting that maybe you should take a break from fasting, or maybe not fast? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've learned that can really be beneficial with fasting is the fact that it can provide gut relief for individuals. And so that's a big one. So gut relief is huge, but for people sometimes when they start overdoing it with fasting, because as we've talked before, fasting is a stressor. And so I think it's one of those things where people get into trouble is where they start stacking stressors on top of each other, and that can take a toll on your system. It can take a toll on your sleep, your hormones, like you talked about, thyroid and things like that. So I think it's something to just be aware of, if you're doing, low carb and you're calorie restricting and you're working out and you're cold plunging and you're fasting, your body is sort of might start slowing down a bit, and we don't want that. So I think it's just something that it's sort of a case by case basis, but it's something some people can handle stress more than others. But if you're someone that does feel like they have a lot of outside stressors, then maybe fasting right away is not what you should be doing.
Yeah, sorry, my camera wish went out. I'm not sure why it's doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned fasting is a stressor, and a lot of people don't realize that it can be a stressor. You're not having calories. You're going to be messing with some of the cortisol surges, when it happens, some blood sugar. Typically blood sugar would go down, but if you're stressed, it can go up from the cortisol connection. Yeah. So, and I think that's important to know, because sometimes you have maybe it's usually more females probably, but they try fasting. They have this cortisol surge and they don't eat to blunt that cortisol and blood sugar balance, with protein usually. Then it can cause havoc, and they can have more hormonal swings throughout the day. So sometimes fasting isn't always for everybody, but it's like working with a coach like you know, with a trainer, with a physician, can kind of guide you through when to fast, when it might not be right for you. Here's some signs to look for. And I think that's huge because it is a stressor. And if you have a lot of stress in your life, maybe you should stack on the stressors strategically, you know, because right now I'm not fasting because I got some stress in my life. And right now
Right.
eating for me, it feels better when I have protein first thing in the morning, but I do try to eat, you know, not past 7 o'clock most nights when I
Right.
can. But that's just me right now. So I might try fasting later. But right now, I'm liking the protein first thing in the morning. It's helping me with satiety. But everybody's different. Everyone's different.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, depends on where you're at, what stage of where you're at in life, and like you said, like I mean, I have a cold plunge, but if I feel like I'm not, let's just say if I'm not feeling 100%, I probably don't. A lot of times, I won't go in there. So I think it's just using it strategically.
Yeah, that's awesome. You have a cold plunge. I want to get one of those. But I don't know how much I would use it because I'm like, it takes a lot for me to like, okay, I'm going today. I'm going today. I have to like think about it, mentally prepare. Um, when did you get your cold plunge, and how's that
Uh,
been benefiting you?
Gosh, yeah, I've had it for a little over a year now. It was like just something that I was like, I really wanted to get. I had a perfect room for it. Because I'm in Chicago, so it can't be outside. Like people in California get them, they keep them outside. This one's indoor, but I have nothing under it. There's no like basement. It's just a slab of concrete. So if something, God forbid, happens with the plunge and the water goes everywhere, I'm okay, right? Like so. Anyways, but yeah, it's been great. I mean, I'm a big golfer. I've had some hip issues and some things like that, and so it's helping with inflammation and stuff like that. And um, I mean, it's just something. To me, it's almost just like getting into a meditative state. It's just another way of doing meditation, personally, and just being in your own sort of in your own little zone. And I don't go in there for long, and I sort of use it strategically. I don't use it around resistance training because when you resistance training, you're breaking muscle down, and then you're repairing, and you don't want to go into a cold environment for that. Maybe if you go for a mile run, you can go in it, but not if you're doing resistance training. So I've learned ways to strategically use it. Um, but it is something that I've just grown to love.
That's awesome. Did you start off
Yeah.
with cold showers first, or did you maybe try cold plunge somewhere else and like, hey, I got to get one?
Yeah, cold showers, and then I was at my parents' house on and off over COVID, and they had a pool, and so I used to go in there when it was a little bit colder, and so I did that, and then some cold baths, and then I just decided to splurge, and because cold baths are cool, but like filling them up and getting ice and doing all this, it's like okay, like it's not bad, but if it just becomes a little bit of a pain, so I've done cryotherapy as well, which is another just form of cold exposure. So yeah.
Yeah, it's weird because we're in the health and wellness, scene, and yeah, it was all about cryo chambers, maybe 5 years ago, and I was doing them all the time too. Then now it's the full body cold immersion. I'm like, man, this takes me back to like training days in high school, where we had to get our whole body in there for injuries. But
Yeah.
now there's a whole host of benefits for that. And yeah, I try to cold plunge when I can. I was trying to get in my pool the other day. It's February, but it was closed. I was trying to get in there, cold plunge. My girlfriend's like, "Don't do it." I'm like, "I'm doing it. We're doing it today." But I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah. So daily stressors, yeah, cold plunge. Sometimes seemingly healthy things can be a stressor, like fasting, like cold plunge. Anything else you would add to that list?
I mean, I just started messing around with red light therapy.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I can't report back much. I've only had it for like a week. But there are studies around red light therapy and how it can, help, especially with skin, a lot around like just like tightening up skin and skin health. But I have to say I'm just getting into it. So it's something I just wanted to try out. And I've had some people on my podcast talk about it. Dr. Michael Twyman, who's a cardiologist, he's big into red light therapy. But anyways, yeah. So that's one. And obviously sauna. I think sweating is important if you can
Hmm.
sweat in some way. It doesn't have to be in a sauna, but some type of sweating every week I think is important.
Exercise, yeah, getting outside in
Yeah.
the heat. I do have a sauna. Yeah, that's one of the things I got a couple years ago during the
Nice.
pandemic, and I love it. It's just stress relief. I'm not a big meditator. I know all the benefits of it. But for me, I just have a really hard time sitting still. But I can go into my quiet place, and chill for a little bit, or sometimes activity. Maybe for you, it's golf. For me, when I golf, I'm super frustrated, so it's not really that that calming for
Yeah,
me.
right.
It can be if I'm like playing good, but that's few and far between. But yeah, I
Right,
think it's
right.
finding what you like to do. For me, maybe shooting hoops, playing basketball still, just to ease my mind. Um,
Yep. Yeah.
so what is in this health and wellness space? There's always new and exciting stuff. Is there anything new and exciting that you're trying besides the red light therapy or like any kind of apps or sleeping
Well,
device like the Aura Ring? Do you try any of that stuff or anything
yeah.
new?
I mean, I think the devices are cool, the wearables. I think you got to be careful with those, and because a lot of times, that wearable might be like, oh, you had shitty sleep, and you're like, oh, I actually feel pretty good, and
Yes.
it can be sort of like a mess with your mind a bit. So I think you got to be a little bit mindful or careful with those wearables. Maybe use them for a few weeks, and then be like, that's what I sort of done. I've tried a lot of different wearables, whether it's a CGM
Hmm.
or a Whoop or Oura Ring. But I do think that's the future is the testing
Hmm.
and just ways to sort of track where your health is at. And you're just seeing this nowadays. I just interviewed a guy who was big in like the anti-aging space, and it is amazing where things are going as far as like stem cell and things like that, and just improving your mitochondria in different ways. And so yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the next whatever, like 10 years. But I think that's where the health and wellness space is. I feel like they're going towards is just turning back the clock as much as possible.
Everybody wants to be younger and more beautiful. That's for sure.
This is true.
Yeah, but I like the point about the trackers because I wear an Oura Ring and I know I don't sleep well, but last night I felt like I slept pretty good. I had some good dreams. But I woke up and the Oura Ring's like, you slept like terrible. I'm like, really? But I have
Yeah.
noticed like if I have like a glass of wine, it messes up. I didn't drink it all yesterday and my sleep was terrible based on the Oura Ring, but I still feel good and I'm, doing what I want to do. And I actually like waited to have my caffeine like you're supposed to do 90 minutes after waking. I never do that. And I was like, that was one of the things I was thinking about today is like, we know all these things to do and they sound great in theory. Like we shouldn't have caffeine. We have to wait 90 minutes before we have caffeine because of the cortisol spikes. And today just so happened that I was able to do that. But most days I'm rushing out the door. I got kids. We're going to school, going to work and trying to work out too. So sometimes I can't do all that stuff. And I'm sure you see that as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's not about being perfect, right? But there's these guidelines and these recommendations, and if it doesn't happen every day, that's fine. I mean, I'm not a big coffee drinker. I will say caffeine. I do sometimes use it strategically, like before a workout or something.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it's not about beating yourself and being perfect. It's just about taking little small steps every day, and I think that's really important.
Awesome. So Brian, if you didn't have any stress, no work, um, obligations or responsibilities, and you could just have the very, very perfect day, what would that look like?
Well, I was just living that about a week ago because I was in Florida. So for me, a perfect day, I mean, some type of golf involved, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be playing. It's a practicing, and then working out. I really enjoy lifting and working out. So those two things for sure, and then just being with family. I'd say those would be the three things that I would be an ideal day.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Any
Yeah.
food you would consume on that perfect day?
Any what?
Any certain food you consume on that perfect day? Or you?
Yeah. I'm No, I would consume food. Yes, for sure. I mean, are you asking me like what my favorite foods are, or you're just saying like,
Yeah, I know. With with our mindsets, we use food as fuel, but sometimes, like, hey, like if I could eat this every single day for the rest of my life, what would that food be? And it'd be healthy and nutritious. Like, what would that food be for you?
and so I mean, I love chocolate peanut butter. Like something like that would be great.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, but obviously I know I can't eat that every day. So, but I have grown to love, like, we get a lot of high quality meats, and we make some cool stuff. Just like ribeyes and fillets and things like that. And those are things that I enjoy.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had one of my best ribeyes I've ever had the other day at a restaurant here in Austin. It was a 100-hour marinated ribeye.
Oh,
Golly, yeah, I was supposed to like save some of it. I was telling myself save some of it. I could barely. I was like, I have like a little bitty piece that I saved, but man,
oh,
yeah, it was good. It was good.
you should have just finished it.
I know. Now it's like, now it's not even worth it. I'm like, what am I gonna do? Make some eggs with
Yeah.
it? I guess so. So we'll
Right.
see.
Right.
So now they're wrapping up. I like to ask a few questions that I typically ask every guest, and it's really cool to see kind of the different answers that I get with this. So if you could put a billboard in Chicago, busy Chicago downtown, just a couple sentences or maybe a couple of phrases, could be a couple words, could be one word. What would that health phrase be and why?
So that would be, if you don't have your health, what do you have?
Love it. Love
Yeah.
it. Good
So
pondering question. Okay, so now if we if we could just imagine a little bit, if we were on a deserted island and you knew you're going to be at this deserted island for a while, what health related device, supplement would you take and why? Or
well,
whatever. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be any of those.
I mean, I think okay. I probably have a boat. No,
Right?
so I could get off. But I would say that some type of device where I could, I actually think like having like something like the X3 would be great to have, because then I could do resistance training while I was on the island. So that was like the first thing that came to my mind. Yeah. So that's probably what it would be.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's the first workout device I think I've had. So everyone has different answers,
Oh,
supplements,
okay.
gadgets. So there's no right or wrong answer. I love it.
No.
Okay, so this has been a really fun interview. I really got to really enjoy, getting to know more about you and how you're helping your clients with health and wellness. And I love the stepladder system. Is there any questions that you may have wanted to cover that I didn't ask today?
I mean, no, I think we touched on a lot. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. It's been fun. So Brian, tell us where we can find out more about you, where we can follow you on social media, where we can find out more about your stepladder system, where we can find out just more about your programs.
Yeah. Right now, briangryn.com is the best place. And then be at bdgryn for Instagram. And as the book comes out and stuff, I'll be posting some things up there so they can just, look for that as well. So
Can you spell your website out for us?
yeah. Oh, Brian Gryn. Yeah. BRIAN and then GRYN. N is in Nancy.com. So
Awesome.
briangryn.com.
And your stepladder system and all your programs are on the website?
Yeah. There'll be a separate website for the book, but that's not completely developed yet. But
And when is the book, the PDF book, or is it a PDF or is it a?
Yeah, it's gonna be a PDF book. Yeah.
Very cool. When does that officially launch?
Your guess is as good as mine. I would say within the next couple of weeks.
That's awesome.
I don't know when this goes live, but probably sometime in March. I would say
Sometime in March. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long did that take you? Because I'm writing a book right now, and it's taken me a lot longer than I expected.
Yeah. Well, I had some help that really helped me gather my thoughts around it, but it's taken. I have to look back, but probably it's taken me at least 6 months.
Yeah. It's tedious. You got to be consistent too. I know that. So
yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, Brian, it's been an awesome time chatting with you, learning more about you and your programs. And I really appreciate all the fasting knowledge that we got today and all the just mindset, nutrition, exercise, and everything else in between. So anyone listening, please give Brian a follow. Please like and share this so we can get more people to watch these episodes. And we'll see everybody next time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Fredrickson Health Show. This podcast is for educational purposes only and not intended to be used as personalized medical advice. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss a single episode. While you're at it, leave us a rating and review. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email newsletter for more information.